Australia is becoming the latest country to cave to Hamas's pressure campaign by agreeing to recognise Palestinian statehood in September. The move is going to place great strain on diplomatic ties with both Israel and the United States, who until recently were two of our strongest allies. Joining me now is former spokesperson for the Israeli government, Eylon Levy. Eylon, great to have your company tonight. Just tell me your reaction to news that the Australian government had agreed to recognise Palestine.
I mean, the decision by the Labour government to recognise a non-existent Palestinian state in response to the October 7th massacre is criminally clueless. I mean, they have no idea the amount of damage they are doing by rewarding Hamas for those barbaric atrocities and encouraging more of them. I saw Albo on Sunrise saying that Hamas will oppose this decision. The opposite. Hamas has welcomed it. Hamas leader Razi Hamid gave an interview last week calling global recognition of a Palestinian state one of the fruits of October 7th. He said it is one of the great achievements of that decision to gun down Israelis at a music festival, burn families alive in their homes, and take hostages they are still starving and torturing in the dungeons under Gaza. So frankly, I don't understand what Australia has to gain by betraying an ally at war, turning its back on its major ally, the United States, and fermenting violence, frankly, in a conflict the government doesn't understand, all to try to appease protests that have taken over the streets of Australia. Frankly, it's crazy.
It is crazy. I think what we believe they have to gain is votes domestically and maybe their chance to be part of history. I think that's probably the motivation. A few hours before the announcement, Benjamin Netanyahu had this to say. Have a listen.
To have European countries and Australia march into that rabbit hole, just like that, fall right into it, and buy this canard is disappointing, and I think it's actually shameful.
Eylon, how betrayed would the Israeli government feel by the Australian government's decision?
I think many of the Israeli people feel betrayed. Israel is still fighting to bring back hostages who are being starved and tortured in the tunnels under Gaza. We saw them film one starving hostage, even forcing him to dig his own grave for the cameras. And to have the Australian government say that it is trying to help release the hostages by rewarding the people who are holding them, it makes absolutely no sense. You know, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the ceasefire talks collapsed the day Macron decided to recognize a Palestinian state. And then Keir Starmer came along and said, if there's no ceasefire by September, we'll recognize a Palestinian state. So what are you going to do if you're Hamas? Obviously, you keep refusing a ceasefire. You keep dragging out the war that you started because you know the world is going to reward you. And I think world leaders fundamentally misunderstand Hamas and what it is about. They think that because Hamas wants to destroy Israel, then somehow they're punishing Hamas by rewarding the Palestinian cause without making them pay any price. But the opposite is true. Hamas is being recognized by Palestinians as heroes for helping to deliver this achievement. And so instead of bringing peace closer, you're pushing peace further away. Just at the time we need world leaders to be pressuring Hamas to accept a ceasefire, lay down its arms, let go of the hostages, and end this war, the world is giving Hamas every reason to keep going, and people are going to get killed.
Can you just speak to something our Prime Minister said on national television here in Australia this morning? He argued that Hamas don't want a two-state solution because from the river to the sea, they want to erase Israel entirely. So if that's the case, why would Hamas be happy about Australia wanting to recognise two states when Hamas only want one? That was his argument. Can you respond to that?
Hamas wants concessions without having to pay a price for them. Obviously, they want something for nothing. Obviously, they're happy for the world to recognize a Palestinian state, to strengthen their claim against Israel, and prepare for the day that they can renew another war against Israel. I mean, when Albo says he wants a democratic Palestinian state living next to Israel, he doesn't create one. That doesn't mean that it happens. All he's doing is pressuring Israel to give the Palestinians territory from which they can continue attacking Israel until they accept Israel's existence. So Hamas is obviously happy to pocket a gain without having to pay anything, without having to offer concessions. You know, world leaders used to think that a Palestinian state should be created at the end of a peace process, as a reward for making peace, not as a reward for bad behavior. And here, Albo and other world leaders have got everything backwards. They're giving Hamas a reward. They're saying it should be given land for nothing, not for making peace, but for refusing peace and dragging out a pointless war while torturing hostages.
Well, in another blow to their relationship, the relationship between Albanese and Netanyahu, our Prime Minister said this of the Israeli leader. Have a listen.
I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu. He again reiterated to me what he has said publicly as well, which is to be in denial about the consequences that are occurring for innocent people.
So our leader reckons your leader is in denial about the consequences of what's happening. What's your reaction to that?
No, I think world leaders are in denial that the reason for all the suffering in Gaza is the brutal terrorist regime that launched a needless war, that is fighting it from a network of tunnels underneath homes and schools and hospitals and mosques and UN facilities, and refuses to lay down its arms while torturing hostages and hijacking aid. That is what people are in denial about. They're in denial about how Hamas designed an urban battlefield in order to get people killed, because they know that images of suffering on global TV will turn public opinion against Israel, and they see that as a victory. I think world leaders are in denial about how much aid Hamas has been hijacking. I mean, just look at the UN's own figures. According to the UN, 89% of the aid trucks that are getting picked up in Gaza now are getting hijacked and looted along the way. Yes, there is hunger in Gaza. Yes, there is suffering. But there's hunger and suffering because Hamas is hijacking aid in order to pay its own people and sell them for a profit. And because we've had a catastrophic failure of the UN aid distribution system in Gaza. And instead of fixing it, they tried to do what is easiest, which is just to blame Israel rather than taking responsibility. And innocent people are paying a price as a result.
Eylon Levy, I always enjoy speaking with you, and I really appreciate you giving your time this evening. Thanks so much.